This is not an article in Jacobin or Current Affairs or anywhere like that. It is an article that is published in a right-wing magazine, and Reason, which is the reason I think that it would be not on the radar of a lot of people on the left. But I think precisely for that reason, I think it's worth kind of busting out of the bubble and taking a look at this for a moment.
Reason is basically Jacobin's evil twin.
That's about right. That's about right. Yeah.
We were separated at birth, and they have a very popular YouTube channel, and we will catch up with them. But you got to hit like and subscribe to this and all the other stuff we do. But here's the piece. A composer condemned arson. Now no one will hire him.
Yeah. So this is. I do like that analogy, by the way. That it's like the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, where Bart has the evil twin who's kept in the attic and fed fish heads. So
we don't quite do that with the Reason staff at the Jacobin office, but there's always next year.
Fair enough. But what the article is about is a composer named Daniel Elder, who is he lives in Nashville, Tennessee. Last summer, during the unprecedented wave of unrest following the police murder of George Floyd, somebody burned down the courthouse in Nashville, and so he posted something about it on Instagram. He said, "Enjoy burning it all down, you well-intentioned blind people." So it's a sort of anodyne statement of kind of milquetoast sort of establishment, but also like a sentiment lots of people with lots of politics might have, that it's of like discomfort with arson, which is not. I think. Like, honestly, I think like if Bayard Rustin had Instagram, he might have posted that. Like it's not a, it doesn't.
The Rustin Instagram posts, those would have been wild.
They would have. But, I don't, he's not making any sort of comment about Black Lives Matter or the protests more generally, or anything like that. He's very specifically commenting on the arson, and, whatever you think about that. I mean, my hot take would be that I don't shed a lot of tears of the burning down of a courthouse, but also I think that politically it's probably a counterproductive thing to do. But whatever you think about that, there's no larger political statement about Black Lives Matter being bad or police violence being good or anything like that, right? It's just purely it's an expression of distress at the courthouse being burned down. And the reaction to this was extreme. So critics were spamming his Facebook and YouTube pages with comments accusing him of being a racist and a white supremacist piece of garbage. He has lots of quotes from emails from people saying they'll never listen to his stuff again. That somebody's a choir director and department head for the music department for a private school in Ohio, informing him that the school will not be programming his music anymore, and people recommended that he read Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility.
That was me. I'm gonna be honest.
That was you. Okay.
It was a good read. I don't know. Didn't everyone read it last summer? Wasn't that the point of all the protests? Was that we all end up reading Robin DiAngelo's terrible book?
I mean, that is the best possible outcome of those protests. That the way that policing works stays exactly the same, but one white Italian woman who does like corporate HR stuff gets really rich. Probably more seriously, it garnered the attention of GIA Publications. As in the world of choral music, GIA is not merely a publisher; it is the major publisher of religious content, thanks to its association with the post-Vatican II Roman Catholic Church. GIA, the president and media editor, contacted Elder about posting an apology. They wrote one up for him. to just sign, which says, over the weekend, I made a post on my social media accounts that was insensitive and wrongly worded. I deeply apologize for the anger, offense, and harm this post caused. While this offense was not intended, it is what was created. For this, I'm truly sorry. There's no justification that I can offer for my post. So rather than try to offer an excuse for what was done, I can offer a promise for what I will do going forward. I commit to making amends and to dialogue. I commit to continue educating myself about privilege and bias. I commit to seeking an understanding of the experience of others, especially the Black community. I know that working for justice requires that we each first act justly. My work begins now. And he said, what? No, I'm not going to sign that, which, is the correct reaction on multiple levels. I mean, I think for one thing, it just demeans the very idea of an apology, that you have a multi-paragraph groveling apology written for you by a corporation for you to put your signature on. And the consequences of this for his career, for working since then, were pretty dire. But the thing I particularly wanted to call people's attention to, and why I think it's worth, again, this is not going to be on most people's radar in our world because where it's published, is what came at the very end. The last couple of paragraphs, because I think there are 2 points to be made about this. Right. One, just on a human level, this is a shitty way to treat people and to interact with people. That this sort of mass denunciation and excommunication and professional consequences for saying something mild that hit people the wrong way. But also, I think there's a political strategic issue here, which is brought out by the last 2 paragraphs of the Reason article. I'm just going to read them here. Nevertheless, the experience has positively impacted Elder in one way. He tells me it's made exiled. He says, I started listening to voices on the right and the center, especially these classical liberals who were exiled from the leftist movement. He says, the strange silver lining is this shook me out of my prejudices a little bit, which I think is depressing on 2 levels. One, that he's probably going to become a much more annoying person now, but 2, that
he's reading Reason now.
Yeah, exactly. And 2, that this is something that I think a lot of leftists read that and draw exactly the wrong conclusion. The conclusion that draws, therefore it's just fine what happened to him. When I think the actual conclusion is the one that's suggested in chapter 4 of Michael Brooks's book, Against the Web, where he talks about the Weinsteins, Brett and Eric, and Brett Weinstein's experience at Evergreen College, which is a kind of foundational thing for the so-called intellectual dark web. And here we go. Michael writes, entire careers are built on this nonsense. We wouldn't have ever heard of Brett Weinstein if not for what happened at Evergreen College. Far too much ink and podcast hours have been spent laboriously re-reviewing his version of the Evergreen drama without attempting to relitigate the he said, she said. I think Doug was correct to ask whether an increasingly corporatized administration was playing divide and conquer by deflecting student anger away from the real decision makers and onto a professor who's arrogant and tone deaf, et cetera, et cetera. The way the activists turned their attention to this ridiculous and thoroughly unimpressive person who turned him into a cause celeb for the right. Whatever else is true about this, what matters most is that Brett and his brother Eric are here with us now, publishing the right-wing classical liberal problem of the IDW. In other words, we would never have to hear from these people if not for this misguided form of student activism at Evergreen State. And there is a broader point here, which is that when you engage in mass denunciations and excommunications and what are creepily referred to as consequences and accountability over some fairly inconsequential nonsense, one of the entirely predictable consequences of this is that you push the people who are targeted by this and anybody who cares about them to the right. Because if everybody who has good, otherwise good politics isn't taking what happened to them seriously, is dismissing it, is making excuses for it, they're certainly not going to listen to them. And it's also, I think, just human nature that if the people that you used to hang out with won't hang out with you anymore, you will find somebody who will. And over time, bit by bit, you are going to be influenced by the way they see the world. If you don't want that to happen, that in itself is a reason not to act like this.
Most people hate this neo-Puritanism, like this. you have to, to confess to being a bad person because you fell into the traps that were laid all around you of, post your feelings on social media, and then it's going to be taken from you and used against you. And then, a company's going to to write up, your apology and you're going to do better. Again, it's humiliating. And most people, rightfully so, say, this is bullshit. I don't want to deal with this. And the problem, of course, is that, there's cancel culture is obviously, it's something that it's one of these terms that has somewhat lost some of its meaning because of how often it's used. But of course, it's something that exists across the political spectrum. It doesn't have a political ideology attached to it. But like Ben's saying, so much of it is associated with the academy, and the academy is associated with the left, wrongfully, because there are no leftists in American universities. Like there's like maybe 3, and they're usually on these YouTube shows, but like everyone else is like a blood-sucking vampire that just wants to like take their lane in like the thought world and say, this is my subject and no one else can touch it. And if you get into my territory, I'm gonna, attack you and take you down. And that kind of like that mode of dealing with intellectual subjects, that way of dealing with people who disagree with you, is unfortunately, it might be an overstatement to say pervasive on the left, but it's certainly a real thing on the left, and it's a problem that
it's very common on the left, and way too many leftists mistake it for politics.
Right. Yeah, that they don't see it. We're the minority, and we have to get people to come to us, because if it's just us, if we keep closing ranks, we will achieve nothing, and you will feel good for a couple months. And then 2 years from now, you're going to move on because you're going to join some NGO or some shit, and you will forget about this past. And so, if you are serious about this project, if you actually believe that we should be decommodifying key aspects of society and of our lives, and that we should expand democracy into the workplace, that we should have greater political rights, all these things, you have to reject this shit. This what Cedric Johnson refers to as like militant liberalism, because people fucking hate it, and it's anathema. What's the word? It's completely it's completely opposed to like the actual principles of the left, of actually seeing people as having value, and of and that people shouldn't be arbitrarily fired for having bad thoughts. Everyone has bad thoughts. Literally everyone has bad thoughts. Like, you should not be fired for a certain set of bad thoughts, like exclusively. Like,
no, exactly. And not for nothing, I'm slightly off topic, but I do completely agree about academia. That is the 2020 election. One of the certainly the lasting consequences of my life was to make me hate most people who did what I did for a living, since they were all the kind of annoying freaks who preferred Warren to Sanders because she she signaled about, as somebody who did her homework, and she referred to her Medium posts as plans and all that shit. Just completely insufferable.